This story is titled, My Mother-in-Law Stole Our Wedding Fund to Save Her Criminal Son-in-Law, so we married without her, and she ended up in jail from the very start. My mother-in-law, let's call her M.I.L, made it painfully clear she didn't like me. When I first started dating my husband, she played nice whenever he was around, but the second we were alone, her whole demeanor shifted. Cold. Dismissive. Like I wasn't worth her time. As the years passed and we got engaged, I tried to ignore it for my husband's sake. I kept hoping that maybe, just maybe, she'd warm up eventually. But instead, things only got worse after my father-in-law, Phil, passed away. Phil was a good man. The kind of person who treated me with kindness from day one. Before he died, he told my husband and me that he'd set aside money to help pay for our dream wedding. We were so touched. It felt like a blessing to have his support as we started planning. But Phil's death was sudden, and nothing about the wedding fund was put in writing. After he was gone, M.I.L took over managing the family finances. At first, she assured us we could still use the money as Phil had intended. I wanted to believe her, despite our rocky relationship. So we planned our wedding. We booked the venue, secured a caterer, hired a photographer, and sent out invitations. M.I.L didn't involve herself much in the details, not that I minded. Honestly, with the way she treated me, it was a relief to keep her at arm's length. My husband's older sister, Sil, was even set to be one of my bridesmaids. Sil and I were never close. She tended to follow her mother's lead and kept her distance, but I held out a tiny hope that the wedding might bring everyone closer. Then 2 months before the big day, everything fell apart. Sil's husband got arrested. Fraud charges. It turned out he'd been running some shady business for years, and now the law had finally caught up to him. The scandal sent shockwaves through the family. Sil was a mess, crying, panicking, terrified of her husband going to prison. M.I.L was distraught too, wringing her hands and saying over and over how horrible it would be if her son-in-law missed the wedding. My husband and I felt bad for Sil, but we made it clear, at least to each other, that the money Phil left behind was for our wedding. We didn't say anything directly to Sil because, in our minds, no one would dare touch that fund for anything else. We were wrong. Without telling us, M.I.L secretly drained the money Phil had saved for our wedding and used it to bail out Sil's husband. I don't know all the details of how she did it, but since nothing was legally documented, she apparently felt entitled to spend it however she saw fit. We found out by accident. About 6 weeks before the wedding, my husband got a call from a relative who casually mentioned Sil's husband was out on bail. The bail had been set sky high, and we knew Sil couldn't afford it on her own. That's when we started putting the pieces together. My husband called his mother and asked outright if she'd helped bail out Sil's husband. At first, M.I.L dodged the question, saying things like, "It's taken care of, don't worry about it." But my husband kept pressing, and finally, she admitted it. She'd used our wedding fund. I'll never forget the look on my husband's face when she said it. He went pale, like the air had been sucked out of the room. He put the call on speaker so I could hear as she tried to justify herself. "You have no idea how hard this has been for Sil," she said. "Family comes first. Phil would have wanted it this way. He'd want all of us together at your wedding." By all of us, she meant Sil's husband. I jumped in then, my voice shaking with anger. "Why would you take the money for our wedding without even asking us?" That's when M.I.L turned hostile. "You wouldn't understand," she snapped. "You're not really part of this family." Those words cut me to the bone. My husband immediately defended me. "Mom, that's enough. Of course she's family. How could you betray us like this? That money was for our wedding, Dad said so himself." But M.I.L wouldn't back down. "There was nothing in writing. I'm his widow. It's family money, and a wedding is just one day. Sil's husband needed help now. That was more important." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You didn't think our wedding was important? You didn't think we needed that support?" I yelled, my voice breaking. She talked over me, directing her words at my husband like I wasn't even there. Realizing we were getting nowhere, my husband ended the call. We sat in silence on the couch, both of us stunned. The wedding we'd been planning for months was suddenly in ruins. We didn't have the savings to pull it off on our own, not on such short notice. In the days that followed, we made the gut-wrenching decision to cancel everything. We lost deposits, paid cancellation fees, and watched as all our carefully laid plans crumbled. It was devastating. My husband apologized over and over, but I reassured him this wasn't his fault. The blame lay squarely with him. M.I.L. We knew one thing for sure. We couldn't have her or Sil at our wedding. Not after what they'd done. So we came up with a new plan. We got married in our backyard. It wasn't the wedding we dreamed of, but it was intimate and beautiful in its own way. We exchanged vows under the old oak tree behind our little house, surrounded only by my parents, my best friends, and one of my husband's closest friends. A family friend officiated. We didn't tell M.I.L. or Sil. We were afraid they'd show up and ruin the day. When we posted a single photo on social media, a simple snapshot of us smiling in our backyard with the caption "Married Red Heart," we thought we were being discreet. But word got back to them fast. And when they found out, all hell broke loose. She didn't even flinch. She flat out denied ever calling me those names. That's when I locked eyes with her and said, calm and steady, "You mean like when you called me a manipulative little witch who was stealing your son?" I repeated her words back, exactly the way she'd said them all those months ago. My husband turned to her, his voice quiet but heavy with disbelief. "Mom, did you really say that to her?" M.I.L. started sputtering, her hands shaking. I didn't mean it like that," she stammered, her face pale. C.I.L. jumped in, trying to deflect. "You're taking it the wrong way," she snapped at me, like that somehow made it better. But the way she rushed to her mother's defense told us everything we needed to know. Those words had been said, and they both knew it. I watched as my husband's expression shifted from shock to a deep, simmering anger. His jaw tightened. He stepped in front of me, shoulders squared, and faced them both. "Enough," he said, his voice low and furious. "I've heard enough. What you did with Dad's money was bad enough. But now I find out you've been treating my wife like this all along." He was livid, but I could also see the hurt in his eyes. "If you can't respect my wife, then you can't respect me. We're done." M.I.L. reached out as if to grab his arm, tears streaming down her face. "I'm your mother. You can't just cut us off. Please, we're family," she cried, her voice breaking. My husband stepped back, out of her reach. His sister's voice cracked as she shouted, "I can't believe you're choosing her over your own family." But my husband just shook his head. "You two stopped being family to us the second you decided to mistreat my wife and sabotage our wedding," he said coldly. Then he told them to leave. Said he didn't want to hear from either of them for the foreseeable future. M.I.L. wailed uncontrollably, clinging to her daughter's arm as C.I.L. pulled her away from the porch. As they made their way to the car, M.I.L. sobbed, asking over and over how her son could do this to his own mother. And then C.I.L. turned to me one last time, her face twisted with rage. "You'll regret this," she spat before they sped off. The second they were gone, I collapsed against my husband, my whole body shaking. He was trembling too, and I could tell he was caught somewhere between anger and heartbreak. We went inside and held each other for a long time. Through tears, I whispered, "I'm sorry I didn't tell you all of that sooner." He held me tighter. "No," he said softly. "I'm sorry I didn't see it myself." It was one of the most emotional moments we'd ever shared, but in a strange way, it felt like a weight had finally lifted. The truth was out now. There were no more secrets, no more pretending. In the days that followed, my husband made good on his word. He cut off all contact with his mother and sister. He blocked their numbers. We removed them from our social media. A few relatives reached out, having heard M.I.L.'s twisted version of events. But when we explained our side, some of them understood immediately and offered their support, saying they weren't surprised given her history. That meant more to us than I can even put into words. Privately, my husband told me, "I'm done. Unless they show real remorse, and maybe not even then, I'm not speaking to them again. They made their choice." I told him, "I never wanted to come between you and your family. That's why I kept quiet for so long." He shook his head and hugged me. "You are my family now, and I'm not losing you because of their nonsense." It's been a couple of weeks since we went no contact. It still feels surreal, especially for my husband, but our home is more peaceful than it's ever been. For once, we don't have to tiptoe around constant drama or disrespect. But I wish I could tell you that was the end of it. Unfortunately, M.I.L. and C.I.L. weren't about to accept this quiet cutoff without a fight. And what came next? It was some of the most outrageous behavior I've ever witnessed. Our plane touched down after 2 weeks abroad, and as much as I hated to admit it, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Home. Even with the jet lag pressing down on my eyelids, it felt good to be back in familiar air. We pulled into our driveway late that afternoon, started unloading suitcases, and that's when it happened. Out of nowhere, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law came rushing at us from the side of the house. I damn near jumped out of my skin when I saw them appear, like they'd been crouched there waiting. "M.I.L," my mother-in-law screamed, her voice cracking as she shouted my husband's name. Sil was right behind her, arms crossed, her glare fixed on me like she wanted to burn a hole through my skull. My husband instinctively stepped in front of me, his shoulders tight, his stance protective. We'd told them, explicitly, to stay away. We'd cut off all contact. So seeing them here wasn't just a shock. It was a betrayal. But deep down, I can't say I was entirely surprised. It was exactly the kind of boundary-stomping behavior I'd come to expect from them. "Son, we need to talk," M.I.L said, her voice strained like she was trying, and failing, to sound calm. "Please, just listen to me." She didn't even glance at me. Not once. Every word out of her mouth was directed at my husband, as though I was invisible. Sil hovered behind her mother, lips pressed into a hard line, her eyes full of poison. My husband kept his voice even but firm. "You're not welcome here. We told you to leave us alone." He didn't budge from his spot on the front walk. I slid my phone from my pocket and, with my hand hidden behind his back, quietly dialed 911. I wasn't about to wait and see how this played out. I had a sinking feeling in my gut that we'd need backup. Then M.I.L tried to push past him. "We're coming inside so we can talk about this as a family," she said, her voice sharp. "No," my husband said, blocking her path on the steps. "Leave. Now." I backed up toward our front door, whispering to the dispatcher, giving them our address, and telling them we needed police immediately. M.I.L still refused to acknowledge my existence. She tried again to sidestep my husband, snapping, "Move aside. I need to talk to my son." That's when Sil finally opened her mouth. "This is all your fault," she hissed, eyes locked on me. My husband's patience snapped. "Do not talk to my wife that way," he barked. His arm shot out protectively to keep them from coming any closer. And that's when M.I.L lost it. She started screaming at me, her voice shrill and cracking. "This is all your fault. Can't you see what she's done to us? You're even calling the police on your own mother because of her." I was still on the line with 911, and I think that's when M.I.L realized it. Her face twisted in rage. Everything turned into a blur after that. Shouting, movement, chaos. They hurled insults at me, "Bitch, snake," accusing me of corrupting my husband and tearing the family apart. Sil suddenly shoulder-checked my husband hard, shoving him in the chest. He stumbled back a step. I felt my heart leap into my throat. They were unhinged. I shouted, "The police are on their way. Leave now." Instead of backing off, M.I.L snarled something about me calling the cops on family and then lunged straight at me. I don't know if she meant to hit me or grab me, but I pressed myself against the front door, fumbling with the knob. My husband grabbed her arm mid-lunge, stopping her cold. Then Sil came at him, clawing at his shoulder, trying to pull him away from her mother. It turned into an ugly, frantic scuffle on our doorstep. M.I.L thrashed wildly and managed to smack my husband hard on his shoulder. He yelled in pain, gripping her arm tighter to keep her from hitting me. Sil was shrieking now, trying to drag him backward. The three of them slammed against me, nearly knocking the breath out of my lungs. And then, sirens. The sound cut through the chaos like a knife. Red and blue lights flashed across the driveway as two police cars screeched to a stop. The officers jumped out, voices booming. Everyone stepped back. Now, one officer separated my husband and me, pulling us to the side while the other corralled M.I.L and Sil a few yards away. The second M.I.L saw the uniforms, she crumbled into a heap of sobs, crying out, "Please. This is my son. This is all a misunderstanding." Sil's tone, on the other hand, turned icy. "We were just trying to have a family discussion, and then SHE went crazy and overreacted," she said, pointing at me. "This is a private family matter." I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. My husband's face was flushed with anger as he spoke to the officer. We told them everything. How we'd already cut contact. How we'd told these women to stay away from our property. How they tried to force their way into our home. My husband showed the officer the red mark where his mother had hit him. I explained how I'd been physically threatened. A neighbor who'd seen part of the confrontation came over and backed up our story. The officers nodded grimly. Then they walked over to M.I.L and Sil. "You're under arrest for assault," one said flatly. "Turn around and place your hands behind your back." The instant they pulled out the handcuffs, M.I.L went into full-blown hysterics. "No. You don't understand. I'm his mother. I don't want to go to jail, she wailed as the officer restrained her. Sill's mask cracked. She glared at my husband with pure venom. How could you do this to us? We're your family, she screamed as the cuffs clicked shut around her wrists. My husband didn't say a word. He just stood beside me, his arm tied around my shoulders, his jaw set like stone. We watched in silence as they were led to the squad car, still sobbing and shrieking. And then they were gone. The officers stayed behind to take our formal statements. We made it very clear we wanted to press charges, both for the assault and for trespassing. They advised us to file for a restraining order as soon as possible. That night, after the adrenaline drained from my body, I sat on the couch next to my husband, staring into space. His shoulder was bruised and sore, an ice pack balanced carefully against it. I can't believe my own mother and sister would do that, he said quietly, shaking his head. I didn't have words to comfort him, so I just stayed by his side and squeezed his hand. In the days that followed, we filed for a restraining order. It was granted. M.I.L and Sil are legally forbidden from coming near us or contacting us now. The assault charges are moving forward. There's a court date in the near future, and we're committed to seeing this through. It's been a couple of months since that day, and with the restraining order in place, M.I.L and Sil have gone completely silent. We started seeing a therapist to help us process everything. The betrayal cuts deep, especially for my husband. And yet, our house feels lighter now. Safer. We're building our life together, day by day, without the constant weight of their chaos dragging us down. For the first time in years, it feels like we can breathe.